The SEPECAT Jaguar is an Anglo-French jet attack aircraft, originally used by the British Royal Air Force and the French Air Force in the close air support and nuclear strike role, and still in service with the Indian Air Force. Originally conceived in the 1960s as a jet trainer with a light ground attack capability, the requirement for the aircraft soon changed to include supersonic performance, reconnaissance and tactical nuclear strike roles. A carrier-based variant was also planned for French service, but this was cancelled in favor of the cheaper Dassault Super Étendard. The airframes were manufactured by SEPECAT, a joint venture between Breguet and the British Aircraft Corporation, one of the first major joint-Anglo-French military aircraft programs. The Jaguar was exported to India, Oman, Ecuador and Nigeria. With various air forces, the Jaguar was used in numerous conflicts and military operations in Mauritania, Chad, Iraq, Bosnia, and Pakistan, as well as providing a ready nuclear delivery platform for Britain, France, and India throughout the latter half of the Cold War and beyond. In the Gulf War, the Jaguar was praised for its reliability and was a valuable coalition resource. The aircraft served with the French Air Force as the main strike attack aircraft until 1 July 2005, and with the Royal Air Force until the end of April 2007. It was replaced by the Panavia Tornado and the Eurofighter Typhoon in the RAF and the Dassault Rafale in the French Air Force. Development. Background. The Jaguar program began in the early 1960s, in response to a British requirement for an advanced supersonic jet trainer to replace the fallen Nat T-1 and Hawker Hunter T-7, and a French requirement for a cheap, subsonic dual-role trainer and light attack aircraft to replace the Fouga Magister, Lockheed T-33 and Dassault Mystère IV. In both countries, several companies tendered designs. BAC, Hunting, Hawker Siddeley and Folland in Britain, Breguet, Pater's, Sud Aviation, Nord, and Dassault from France. A memorandum of understanding was signed in May 1965 for the two countries to develop two aircraft, a trainer based on the ECAT, and the larger AFVG. Cross-channel negotiations led to the formation of SEPECAT in 1966 as a joint venture between Breguet and the British Aircraft Corporation to produce the airframe, though based in part on the Breguet Bridge 121, using the same basic configuration and an innovative French-designed landing gear. The Jaguar as built also incorporated major elements designed by BAC, notably the wing and high-lift devices. Production of the aircraft components would be split between Breguet and BAC, and these would be assembled on two production lines, one in the UK and one in France. There would be no duplication of work. Each component for the aircraft had only one source. The British trainer requirement had been more demanding, requiring supersonic performance and superior avionics. As a result, the BR 121 needed a thinner wing, increased weapon load and more power, the latter to meet the RAF's required ferry range of 2,600 miles. A separate partnership was formed between Rolls-Royce and Turbomeca to develop the ADUA afterburning turbofan engine. The Bridge 121 was proposed with Turbomeca's Tourmalet engine for ECAT, but Breguet preferred the RRB 172, and the joint venture would use elements of both. The new engine, which would be used for the AFVG as well, would be built in Derby and Tarnos. Previous collaborative efforts between Britain and France had been complicated. The AFVG program ended in cancellation, and controversy surrounded the development of the supersonic airliner Concorde. Whilst the technical collaboration between BAC and Breguet went well, When Dassault took over Breguet in 1971, it encouraged acceptance of its own designs, such as the Super Étendard naval attack aircraft and the Mirage F1, for which it would receive more profit over the Anglo-French Jaguar. The initial plan was for Britain to buy 150 Jaguar B trainers, with its strike requirements being met by the advanced BAC Dassault AFVG aircraft, with France to buy 75 E trainers and 75 A single-seat strike attack aircraft. Dassault favoured its own Mirage G aircraft above the collaborative AFVG, and in June 1967, France cancelled the AFVG on cost grounds. This left a gap in the RAF's planned strike capabilities for the 1970s, at the same time as France's cancellation of the AFVG. Germany was expressing a serious interest in the Jaguar, and thus the design became more oriented towards the low-level strike role. By October 1970, the RAF's requirements had changed to 165 single-seat strike aircraft and 35 trainers. The Jaguar was to replace the McDonnell Douglas Phantom FGR-2 in the close air support, tactical reconnaissance and tactical strike roles, freeing the Phantom to be used for air defense. Both the French and British trainer requirements had developed significantly, and were eventually fulfilled instead by the Alpha Jet and Hawker Siddeley Hawk respectively. The French, meanwhile, had chosen the Jaguar to replace the Aéronaval's Dassault Étendard.The, and increased their order to include an initial 40 of a carrier-capable maritime version of the Jaguar M, for the Aéronaval. For these apparently disparate aims would come a single and entirely different aircraft, relatively high-tech, supersonic, and optimized for ground attack in a high-threat environment. Prototypes. The first of 8 prototypes flew on the 8th of September 1968, a two-seat design fitted with the first production model, a dual engine. This aircraft later went supersonic on its third flight, but was lost on landing on the 26th of March 1970 following an engine fire. The second prototype flew in February 1969. A total of 3 prototypes appeared in flight at the Paris Air Show that year. The first French A prototype flew in March 1969. In October, British S conducted its first flight. An M prototype flew in November 1969. The M had a strengthened airframe, an arrestor hook and different undercarriage, twin nose wheel and single main wheels. After testing in France, it went to Breguet thoroughly for carrier landing trials from the land-based catapult. In July 1970 it made real takeoffs and landings from the French carrier Clemenceau. For these trials there were doubts about the throttle response in case of an aborted landing. The shipboard testing has also revealed problems with the aircraft's handling when flying on one engine. Although planned engine improvements were to have rectified these problems, the M was considered a suitable replacement for the Étendard.The, but the Aéronaval would only be able to purchase 60 instead of 100 aircraft. Furthermore, the Jaguar M was expensive, limiting the size of the force the French Navy could afford. In 1971, Dassault proposed the Super Étendard, claiming that it was a simpler and cheap development of the existing Étendard.IV, and in 1973, the French Navy agreed to order it instead of the Jaguar. Although rising costs of the Super Étendard meant that only 71 of the planned 100 aircraft were purchased, the M was cancelled by the French government in 1973. Design overview. The Jaguar is an orthodox single-seat, swept-wing, twin-engine monoplane design, with tall tricycle-type retractable landing gear. In its original configuration, It had a maximum takeoff weight in the 15-ton class, and could manage a combat radius on internal fuel alone of 850 kilometers, giving the Jaguar greater operational range than competitor aircraft such as the Mikoyan and MiG-27. The aircraft had hardpoints fitted for an external weapons load of up to 10,000 pounds. Typical weapons fitted included the Matra LR, F-2 rocket pod, BAP 100mm bombs, Matra AS-37 anti-radar missiles, AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles, and Rock-I cluster bombs. The RAF's Jaguars gained several new weapons during the Gulf War, including CRV-7 high-velocity rockets and American CBU-87 cluster bombs. Finally, the Jaguar was equipped with either a pair of French DEFA cannons, or alternatively British Aden cannons. The Jaguar International had the unusual optional provision for overwing pylons, used for short-range air-to-air missiles, such as the Matra 550 Magic or the AIM-9 Sidewinder. This option frees up the underwing pylons for other weapons and stores. RAF Jaguars gained overwing pylons in the build-up to Operation Granby in 1990, but French Jaguars were not modified. The RAF's Jaguar 97s were intended to be wired for the carriage of ASRAAMs on the overwing launch, but clearance of this weapon was never completed because of funding cuts. Engine. The SEPECAT Jaguar is powered by the Rolls-Royce Turbo-Mega turbofan engine, which was developed in parallel and primarily for the Jaguar. A separate partnership was formed between Rolls-Royce and Turbo-Mega to develop the A two-shaft turbofan engine equipped with afterburners. Twin engines were selected for survivability. Ease of maintenance was a major consideration, an engine change being possible within 30 minutes. For the Jaguars it needed a high bypass capable of high thrust for takeoff, supersonic flight and low-level dashes. When the first prototype Jaguar flew on the 8th of September 1968, it was also the first flight for the engine. In its initial development, the A engine had complications with the stability of the afterburner system, and shipboard testing showed slow throttle response times. Problematic in the situation of an aborted landing, engine improvements rectified these problems prior to the Jaguar coming into service. In French service, the Jaguars were introduced using the original Mk 101 engine. RAF Jaguars entered service using the Mk 102 engine, mainly featuring better afterburner throttle control over the Mk 101. In 1974, the RAF later had its Jaguars re-engined around 1981 with improved A Mk 104, and again in 1999 with the Mk 106, each providing greater performance. The A was developed into both afterburning and non-afterburning models. The BA Hawk, which had beaten the Jaguar to fulfill the Air Staff Target 362 trainer requirement, also adopted the non-afterburning A engine developed for the Jaguar. The A engine found use in several aircraft abroad, such as the McDonnell Douglas D-45 Goshawk, the Mitsubishi T2, and the Mitsubishi F1. Even following the Jaguar's retirement in Europe, the A continues to be an active product with new variants being developed. As of February 2013, the Indian Air Force was considering the fitting of 125 Jaguars with new Honeywell F125IN engines avionics, although in operational theaters such as the Gulf War the Jaguar proved to be mechanically more reliable than the Panavia Tornado. The aircraft's avionics were a hindrance to conducting missions, owing to the Jaguar's original shortcomings in navigation and target acquisition. French Jaguars had to be escorted by Dassault Mirage F-1CR reconnaissance aircraft to act as guides for the Jaguars. The Jaguar provided a valuable component of the campaign. The RAF detachment of 12 Jaguars flew 612 combat sorties, with no aircraft lost. Significant changes were made both during and shortly after the war, owing to obsolete navigational systems being unable to provide the accuracy required. Both French and British Jaguars were quickly modified with global positioning system receivers, a recent technology at the time. Prior to 1995 NATO bombing campaign in Bosnia and Herzegovina known as Operation Deliberate Force, a dozen Jaguars were upgraded with the capability to carry the TILD laser designator pod and redesignated Jaguar GR-1B and T-2B respectively. Shortly afterwards, the RAF upgraded its Jaguar fleet to a common standard incorporating TILD and the ability to use new reconnaissance pods. The interim GR-3 upgrade added a new HUD, a new hand controller and stick-top, integrated GPS and TERPROM terrain referenced navigation. The further upgraded Jaguar GR-3A introduced the new EOGP-1 digital reconnaissance pod, a helmet-mounted sight, improved cockpit displays, a data link, and improved night vision goggles compatibility. A single Jaguar was converted into the Jaguar Active Control technology with fly-by-wire controls and aerodynamic alterations to the airframe. The aerodynamic instability improved maneuverability, and the test data was used in the development of the Eurofighter.